Well, welcome everybody to the second session of Christmas in the Fall. I'm so glad that you're here and joining me for this month of learning some Christmas tunes that we can play down the road here. I want to get an early start so that we could have time to digest, work with the music, and then when it comes around to just after Thanksgiving, to have these tunes under our fingertips and be able to play them for however you would like to play them or whoever you'd like to play them for. And I know that a lot of people are going to be doing performances via Zoom and online outlets like we're doing right now to keep up the Christmas spirit. And I think it's neat that so many people who would not consider themselves professional musicians are learning music and then sharing that music with other people to share the joy of music and especially sharing the joy of the Christmas season. So I have purposely chosen 10 songs for this month that are very, very popular tunes that a lot of people will enjoy singing along with. And what I'm trying to do is mix it up a little bit, do one song that's very, very easy to play, and then maybe one that's a little more technically advanced so that not only are we learning some Christmas tunes, but we're also still challenging ourselves technically to be better players and bring some things into play for 2021 as we continue to enjoy our time with the Mountain Dulcimer and the journey that we're all on together. And tonight's no exception. We've got an easy tune, and we've got a tune that's not difficult really to perform, but it's difficult to recall. We'll start off with the easy one, and that's going to be Deck the Halls. So hopefully you have gone back to our folder and pulled out those two tunes. If not, it's the same folder that we're going to have for the entire month. And if you get a printout of those tablatures. Now, I'm not going to blame you for not printing out the 12 Days of Christmas. That is a huge tab. But what I aim to do tonight is to show you a way of not having to read the tab. I will just break it down into sections and then show you the secret for being able to play it. So if you didn't print it out, no problem. You are saving probably a lot of trees. But if you've got a way of keeping at least a portion of it up on your screen, I can, and now of course I will put a version up on the screen as well so you can see what I'm talking about, because nobody wants to look at a tablature that is that huge, right? So go ahead and take out Deck the Halls. I'm going to go ahead and put this over on the speaker view for the purpose of the video. And get us set here. All right. Pardon the mess in the background. Normally I like to have a pristine backdrop for the video workshops that I do, but I'm right now in the middle and just about near the end of recording a new album, and so everything is kind of in place so I don't have to restage it every single time I go and work on a new track. So I've been working very, very hard for the past couple of weeks, and so you see a lot of stuff. Plus, for those of you on Patreon, you know I'm doing the second half of the 4000 Club concert tomorrow night, and so the concert setup is behind me as well and has been set up since last week, so once again I don't have to change anything. So it's a little chaotic. There's a big stack of Folkcraft books behind me that just came in today. It's kind of a mess, but that's okay. All right. Where's the Christmas tree? Well, we haven't put it up yet, but there's a possibility. Jay and I have been talking about it in the next few sessions where I might decorate a bit more. So you might see a Christmas tree coming up. I have to get it out of the shed. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, and we're going to take a look at Deck the Halls. So I'm going to click the AirPlay here. Click Share here. Drag across the screen. And bring the tab up. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear that dulcimer. All right. All right, this is an older tab, and so I made a little boo-boo when I first put this together. Not really a boo-boo, but you'll see, as we always do, our exploration of what the tab has to offer. So we know going in, before we begin playing it, what to expect. It's just a one-page tab, very, very simple. But you'll notice right here that I did not put it in the key of D. We are in the key of D, but I didn't put F sharp and C sharp on the staff, which is why throughout the piece you'll see F sharp and C sharp in front of every single note. It's a small thing, but I want you to be aware of the fact that I goofed. So we are in DAD tuning. We are in the key of D, regardless of the fact that the key signature isn't on the staff. And we are in 4/4 time. That top number is how many beats are in the measure, and that bottom number is what gets the beat. It's the note duration that's the key for us to follow. And that 4 stands for the quarter note. All right. So after we look at the very, very basics, we then look at navigation. And the navigation for this is really simple. First of all, right here in the first measure, we've got repeat symbols at the beginning of the measure. And then at the end of measure 4, we've got repeat symbols as well. And so that means we're going to play everything in between those repeat symbols twice. We'll play it through one time, go measures 1 through 4, and then we'll go right back to measure 1 and play that part again. And so that's our main refrain. Deck the halls with balls of holly, fa la 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 la. Repeat, this the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. And then we move on to measure 5, don we now our gay apparel, and that goes right on to the end of the piece and then stops. And of course you can repeat this for all of the different verses, and we can do a lot of different interesting things and different timings and all kinds of stuff with that. So it really is a very, very simple piece, a simple arrangement. The next thing is to take a look at our notes and look at our chords and see if there's anything that doesn't look familiar to us. And this is not going to be one of those pieces. There are no tricky chords or extended chords. It's pretty basic. So measures 1 through 4, you'll notice that we just have things happening on the melody string. And then in measure 4, we go very briefly over to the middle string to pick up an extra note there. So I'm not a fan of putting zeros in to indicate the drone, but you can always assume when we've got a series of melodies or melodic passages taking place with a D major as the support, that you could play that just melody if you wanted to, if you've got somebody, a guitar player or somebody else sitting in with you, or you can drone that and it'll sound really good. I'll also show you something that we can do a little bit different with that once we walk through it. Then we get into measure 5 and we've got our 101A chord, very, very standard chord there. And then once again we get off of that A, and with 2, 3, 1, well, actually you're going to hold on to the 101. And then it goes back to D in measure 6. So make sure in measure 5 that you don't let go of the 1 on the bass string. Hold on to that while you're playing on the melody string, because at that point we have gone to the 5 chord, the A chord. So in that case I probably should have put the 1 there. Again, this is a very old tab, and I wasn't thinking about indicators like that. I'll have to update that. I always say that, and I never do. Measure 6, we're back into D. And then in measure 7, we stay in D, we play up the melody string, and then we get into a 3-3-5 G major L-shaped chord. We're going to hold that chord while we play on the melody string up to 6.5 and 7. And in measure 8, we've got an L-shaped 4-4 6.5 A major chord. Again, you're going to hold on to the 4 on the bass and on the middle string while we play 5 and 4 on the melody string. Measure 9, we're going back to D, so you can go back to your drone and stick to the melody. That goes for measure 9 and for measure 10. And then we'll wrap things up in measure 11 with our 3-3-5 G major. We're going to play that, and then at the very end of the measure we'll go to a 2, 3, 4 D major slant chord. We'll pick up that melody note at 3rd fret on the melody string, and then finally measure 12. We'll go 0, 0, 2 for D major. We'll hit a 101 chord. We're going to hit that A very quickly before landing back on D on the final half note chord there, just an open strum on all 0. And that is all there is to the piece, and we can move through it a few times and make all that stuff happen. So if there's anything there that doesn't feel familiar to you, go ahead and take the moment right now to put your fingers on those chords and on those notes. Because what we want to do is the first time we do play through it, we want to make sure that we have a pretty good idea of how we're going to approach it, what fingers we're going to use on what strings, how we're going to manage holding those strings down and maintaining those chords while playing the melody string. Now, I am a thumb player, so I use my thumb and then the index finger and the middle finger. I'm typically using my index finger on the bass string, my middle finger on the middle string, and my thumb is doing a lot of the melody work. If you're a Schnaufer style player, you're probably using index finger, middle finger, and ring finger, and your chord shapes and your grips are going to be a little bit different. But I've discovered that a lot of people who do play Schnaufer style do sometimes utilize the thumb because it's got just such a great reach, and to ignore that would be a shame. And I know that Stephen Seifert, who studied with David, oftentimes does use his thumb. One of the stories I love about David is when Jeff Hames was studying with him. Jeff told me that David duct taped his thumb to his palm so he wouldn't use it. And I don't think Jeff has broken out of that. I think he pretty much doesn't use the thumb anymore. But interestingly enough, Seifert, who really worked with David for a long time, does incorporate the thumb, realizing that it's great for reaching out and grabbing those melodies while you play bar chords to support those changes as they come along. Did somebody have a question there?
I do.
Yeah.
Can you just show me measure 8, how you play that?
Well, I'm getting ready to go through the whole thing actually.
Okay, then I'll be quiet.
No worries, no worries. But as you're now looking at the tablature, and if you're seeing anything that is not really familiar, be thinking about alternatives. Try using what you would normally use, and then because sometimes we'll use a certain grip to get a certain chord, a 3-3-5, and we'll be able to play that melody in a certain way. But if the melody does something a little bit different, if we've never encountered this particular melodic movement before while holding this chord, it can trip you up a little bit. So what we're looking at for any piece of tablature is, once you're in a measure, figure out what steps you took and what fingers you took or used to get to that point, chord-wise, melody-wise, and then how you're going to progress from there into the next measure. The idea really is to try and keep your fingers on the same string as much as possible without having to keep switching back and forth between the strings. Switching between strings causes choppiness because when we take our finger off the string, that string will stop resonating for a moment. And it doesn't matter nearly as much with a song that's sort of boisterous, like Deck the Halls or like fiddle tunes. But if you're playing ballads, if we were playing Silent Night or Oh Holy Night, it would really stand out if we had choppy playing. But choppiness can actually be incorporated into the rhythmic structure of the tune. So be thinking about that as we move through. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to play it for you. Well, actually, what I'll do, I'll walk through the piece, measure by measure, and then I'll just go ahead and play it through using the overhead camera so you can see what I'm doing. So right now, you're going to be looking at the music on the screen. I'm going to play through it, describe what I'm doing, and then I'll flip the overhead camera on, and I'll play through it so you can see what I'm doing. Then I'll open it up for questions. We'll clear up some stuff, and then we'll move on to some different timing and also an alternate chord that we can throw in here at one point in time. So starting from the very beginning, playing against the drone for all of these 4 measures, and I like to use my fingers in sequence, thumb, index, and middle finger. So instead of playing noter style where I'm taking one finger and moving it every single time I'm hitting a note, I'm laying my thumb down at 4, my index finger down at 3, my ring finger or my middle finger down at 2, and then sliding that down to 1, like in that first measure. You'll see what I'm talking about when I put that overhead camera on there. Nothing a matter with playing noter style and just using a noter or using one finger to do that. But I've just really gotten in the habit of using fingers in sequence because you can move a lot smoother along some melodies there. So we're going. Coming over and getting that 2 on the middle string. I use my index finger for that because it's handy. There is no rhyme or reason. There is no you must use this finger on this string or you must use this finger on that fret. It's going to be whatever's comfortable for you. So whatever you're doing with this, do what feels right to you. And if you think that it's not working, maybe try a different sequence of fingers or maybe use a different finger as you're moving along. Doing that first 4 measures again. Sorry, I got the 1.5 and I'm not looking. I'm looking at the music. I can drone that whole thing, or I can bring the drone in when I really want to, maybe on the downbeats. Notice how that clears things up a bit and creates some more dynamics in terms of the drone. I love the drone. The drone is what drew me to the mountain dulcimer. But doing all drone all the time doesn't leave you a lot of room for going up in volume or going down in volume. You've always got that drone going on. So by selectively bringing it in, you allow yourself to flat pick those melody notes and they pop a lot more and they don't compete with the drone, or the drone doesn't compete with the melody. So let me go ahead and I want to do the first 4 measures again and then we'll move on. Into measure 5, we have our 101 chord. Once again, we want to keep that 1 on the bass string there, and of course we don't have to worry about the middle string. But as whatever your finger you're using on the melody string, make sure you're holding on to that bass string at the 1. That's keeping the foundation for our A chord. Even though we're playing an E there, it still works for us in this point. What we're basically playing is we're using the 5th. We're using the perfect 5th of the A major chord to anchor it as a bass. And that works just as well as using an A. So I'm going to go 101. And then we can let go of all of it for measure 6. Getting into measure 7. Then land, as you move your thumb up from 4 to 5, go ahead and drop your other fingers in there on the 3rd fret. And this is again why I love using my thumb, because I can hold down a bar at the 3rd fret and my thumb can still make it up to 6.5 and play the melody. So measure 7. And then we can move that entire L shape up in measure 8 to 4, 4, 6.5. Thumb comes down to 5, and then 4. Now, I like to use I like to make a bar when I'm doing my L-shaped chords. And the reason I like to do that is because I've found that more often than not, while you're barring, and barring gives us the ability, we're placing our fingers on all the strings all the way across one fret. That essentially changes the chord for us. What happens sometimes is the melody will make its way down to where the bar is. So if you're playing a 3-3-5 G major chord, say I'm using my index finger on the bass string at the 3rd fret, my middle finger on the middle string at the 3rd fret, and then my thumb at the 5th fret on the melody string. When I start walking down, and let me actually, if I walk down and want to go to the 3rd fret, I got to put my ring finger down in there to grab that note if the melody goes down to the 3rd fret. But if I bar that 3rd fret all the way across and then go ahead and put my thumb at the 5th fret on the melody string, of course I'm not going to hear what's happening at the 3rd fret on the melody string because my thumb is playing 2 frets up. That's going to take precedence. But all I got to do is take my thumb off the string to go from 5 to 3. Which also means I can walk it down from 5 to 4 to 3. And just pick up my thumb when I get to 4. That happens more often than not, and so I just got in the habit of barring my L-shaped chords. It just takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it. You can even use your ring finger to move down to the next fret if the melody continues past or lower pitches than the bar. You could even bring your pinky finger in on the melody string if you need to go further than that. And I'll show you that when we get the overhead camera going on. So back at measure 8, that's basically why I'm telling you this, is because we go 4, 4, 6.5, and then 5 comes down, and then we end up with a half note at 4. So we're right there at the bar. So if you bar at the 4th fret when you play your A major L-shaped chord there, you won't have to quickly put a finger into place when you need that 4. You can just simply lift your thumb after you play the 5. It's already there under your fingers. Measure 9, we're back to droning and playing the melody. And then measure 11, we'll do a little bit of a shuffle here. We're going to play our L-shaped 3-3-5 G major chord, and then get down into our 2-3-4. For this 2-3-4, I'm using my middle finger on the bass string, my index finger on the middle string, and my thumb on the melody string. So I'll use my thumb to come down and pick up the 3, that 8th note at the end of measure 11. And then I'll continue to slide it down and take my fingers off the bass and middle string to get the 0-0-2. Then thumb goes down to 1, and I drop in my index finger on the bass string at 1 for the 101A chord, and then let go of everything for the D major that ends that measure and ends the piece. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, go big screen, and get our overhead camera here into place. Okay, now I'll do that again so you can see what I'm doing. First of all, from measure 1 to 4, playing against the drone with the melody. Now you see I use some different fingers there, but typically when I've got my hands on home row keys, like when you're typing, I typically go middle, index, and thumb for frets 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, 6.5, and then thumb can slide up to 7. I can get a whole D major scale and move my hand one time. So because of that spacing, and I try to let those fingers live at those frets, and I'll make exceptions based on the movement of the melody and the chords. It's wherever my finger is going to be the most helpful that I'll drop that finger in. Whatever's closest to the fret that I need to be at, that finger's going to come in, or the finger I'm the most comfortable with, which often is going to be the thumb. Thumb comes in here. And here, I bring my index finger in, because it just happens to be there. It happens to be in the neighborhood. You'll also notice that we're playing this with a slight swing to it. We're swinging those 8 notes instead of dum da dum 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 da da da. It's doom da dum 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 dee dum dum ba dum ba dum. It's got more of a bounce to it, and that's typically how people sing it and play it. Measure 5, 101 chord. Hanging on to the 1 on the bass string, and the thumb is working the melody string. Now here's the thing. You can go back with the thumb like that. Sometimes I use my ring finger like this. And why do I do that? Because then I can slide the index finger on the bass string and the ring finger on the melody string up to the next place I'm going to go if it's going to be a bar chord or something like that. But you don't really have to do that in this case because we're going to an open 002. Notice how I'm reaching for notes as opposed to trying to slide back and forth. I got thumb on 4. And then I use my middle finger to get down to 1, just so I can get there and make sure that those notes are legato, that they're touching each other, and that we don't have a big gap. Sliding is fun, though, because you hear that slippy slidey thing going on, and that's always cool because we can get away with that as a mountain dulcimer. A lot of instruments can't get away with doing that. Measures 5 and 6 again. Okay, now watch this action on measure 7 and going into measure 8. So I use these fingers in sequence. Now all I have to do is slide my thumb up to 5 and drop my bar in. Thumb continues up, 6.5, 7. And then I'm going to adjust this modified L shape down to the 4, 4, 6.5. Thumb's going to come down 1 fret, and these fingers are going to come up to the 4th fret. 5, thumb takes care of that, and then I just lift the thumb up, and 4 is already being taken care of by my ring finger because I'm barred across the 4th fret. Let me do that 7th and 8th transition again. And then we go back to our drone and our original melody at measure 9. Measure 11, we'll do a bit of a pivot here. I call it the Old Finger Switcheroo. Sometimes you've got no choice but to take your fingers off one string and put them on another string and reconfigure your chord shape, reconfigure your grip is what guitar players and mandolin players call it. But if you can do it quickly enough, I'm actually hopping my fingers off the strings and then changing the shape. So if anything, I'm shortening that last note, the last G chord that we're playing of those 4 8th notes in measure 11. I'm shortening it probably just like a 30-second note to get over there. So I'm making it a bit more staccato. That gives me time to be there for that dotted quarter note 2, 3, 4. And you can get away with little moments of timing like that in order to get yourself into a better position and transition between your chords. As I mentioned before, I'm using my thumb to come down and pick up the 3, that 8th note at the end of measure 11, and then walking it down to the 0, 0, 2 in measure 12. Thumb continues down to 1, keeping that finger on that 1 string as much as possible. Index finger comes over on the 1 on the bass string. And then we go to our open. Let me play the whole thing here for you with a bit of feeling and oomph and the spirit of the holidays. And you could play that for all the different verses. One thing I want to point out is that some people like to do in certain arrangements of the tune will bring an A in measure 3. So we go. So that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, we would anchor on the bass string at the 1 to give us an A for the first part of the measure. When we land on the 2, the dotted quarter note, we let go of the 1. So you can do that for an alternate way of playing it. Either way will work. You could also go because technically that 2 that we're playing on the middle string, which is a C sharp, that's the major third of an A major chord. So it does go back to A major in some arrangements, and certain people will play it like that. Instead of having to play the whole thing, which as you may recognize, this would be part of a 1, 2, 4 extended slant A major chord. But the melody itself is on the middle string at the 2nd fret. And the rule of chord melody style playing is to make sure that the melody note is the highest pitched note in the chord. So you don't want to go any higher than the middle string. We don't want to use the melody string at all, which I'm sure is a huge relief to all of you out there because nobody likes the 1, 2, 4 chord. Nobody. I've never met anybody who had a t-shirt made. I love 1, 2, 4. My hands love 1, 2, 4. Nobody says that because it is a finger buster. But what you can do to add some flavor is when you come over and grab that 2 on the middle string is to go ahead and land the 1 on the bass string. So you can go. And that gives you just a little bit of extra color and a little bit of extra chord movement without playing the entire chord. You could do that as a variation, as a number of times you play through the piece. Depending on who you're playing with, they might be voicing those chords, or they may not. I like it with the drone and hanging out in D the whole time. That's the magic of the mountain dulcimer. But if you are playing with an ensemble, or if you're playing with somebody and they're articulating that G or that A chord, there are a couple of different places in measure 3, at the beginning of measure 3, the first 2 beats, and also the second beat of measure 4, you can go ahead and bring that A chord in there. That's what's going on. So hopefully you can make some notes there to remind yourself that you do have the option of playing the A chord at that point. Every place else in the tune that requires an A proper is notated in the music. But I want to keep this nice and simple. But if you want to make it a little bit more interesting and technical, those are the two spots where you can throw that A in there. The first two beats of measure 3 and beat 2 of measure 4 are both widely considered to be a change to the 5 chord or the A chord. And that's Deck the Halls. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any difficulty with anything out there? Any suggestions that I could make for you? Let me know.